What if the thing that's been holding you back your entire life isn't failure, but fear of it? What if every dream you've buried, every risk you've avoided, every decision you've delayed was quietly governed by a force so subtle, so familiar, that you stopped questioning its presence? Napoleon Hill called it the invisible enemy, and he wasn't talking about bad luck, poverty, or circumstance. He was talking about fear. And in Outwitting the Devil, he didn't just expose it, he disarmed it. Imagine, for a moment, that your greatest weakness is actually your greatest untapped source of strength. That the exact fear that keeps you stuck, fear of criticism, fear of poverty, fear of ill health, fear of loss, fear of old age, fear of death, is also the doorway to your freedom, but only if you dare to confront it. Hill wasn't interested in comfort zones. He was obsessed with mental emancipation. He believed that fear is not a warning signal. It's a tool of control, used by the devil himself to keep you drifting, passive, predictable. Ask yourself, how many of your decisions today are born from desire? And how many are hijacked by fear? That voice that whispers, "Not now. You're not ready. You might fail." Whose voice is that really? Is it yours? Or is it the echo of a deeper, darker conditioning? One that started long before you were aware of it. Hill challenges you to go there, to stare directly into the face of what scares you and not flinch. Because on the other side of that confrontation is your power, raw, focused, and unstoppable. This isn't just theory. This is psychological warfare. And your mind is the battlefield. But here's the twist. You don't fight fear by resisting it. You conquer fear by understanding it, by naming it, by tracing its roots and rewriting the story it tells you. Hill teaches that each of the 6 basic fears is a mask, and once you remove it, what you'll find isn't weakness, but clarity. You've been told that fear protects you, but Hill shows you fear manipulates you. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. So, what if you could reclaim the mental territory that fear has occupied for years? What if, instead of being driven by avoidance, you were moved by vision? That's exactly what this journey is about. Not motivation, not empty positivity, but radical self-awareness. And it begins by looking straight into the 6 basic fears, not as your enemies, but as the shadows that define where your light needs to shine. Stay with me. What you're about to discover doesn't just challenge what you believe about fear. It might change the way you live. Most people never realize how much of their life is governed by fear until it's too late. They look back and see a trail of dreams deferred, chances never taken, and voices never spoken. Napoleon Hill knew this better than anyone. In his secret manuscript, locked away for over 70 years, he revealed something terrifyingly simple. Fear isn't just a feeling, it's a strategy, a design, a deliberate tool used to keep minds asleep and lives unfulfilled. And the most dangerous part, we accept it. We even justify it. He called it drifting, that passive state of existing without direction, driven by circumstance instead of choice. Drifting isn't loud. It doesn't scream. It seduces. Slowly, softly, it convinces you that security is more important than growth, that familiarity is safer than freedom, and before you even realize it, you're not living. You're surviving. Hill warns us, fear is the currency that the devil uses to keep us in that state, and the 6 basic fears are his 6 favorite tools. Fear of poverty. It doesn't just make you cautious, it makes you obedient. Fear of criticism. It silences your voice before anyone else does. Fear of ill health. It turns every ache into a prophecy. Fear of loss of love. It transforms connection into dependency. Fear of old age. It makes you chase youth instead of wisdom. And fear of death, the ultimate fear, keeps you from truly living. These are not just emotional responses. They are deeply ingrained belief systems, passed down, reinforced, normalized. And yet Hill wasn't a prophet of doom. He was a strategist of liberation. He didn't expose these fears to scare us. He exposed them so we could reclaim our agency. Because when you recognize fear for what it is, a pattern, a parasite, you can choose something different. You can stop drifting, you can start directing. But only if you're willing to be radically honest with yourself. Which of these 6 fears is running your life? And how long will you let it? This is where transformation begins. Not by fighting fear, but by unmasking it. The minute you shine awareness on it, its grip weakens. Because fear thrives in silence and darkness. But your awareness is a floodlight, and Hill's words are not just theory, they are a map, a blueprint to freedom that begins with one courageous decision, to stop surrendering to fear and start using it as fuel. Fear, when left unchecked, becomes ritual. It shapes not just your actions, but your identity. You stop seeing it as separate from you, it becomes you. Hill understood this psychological hijack. He warned that once fear occupies the mind, it builds a home there, crafting excuses that sound reasonable, decisions that feel responsible, and behaviors that seem rational. But they're not. They're prisons disguised as logic. And the most terrifying part? These prisons are self-imposed. You built them, and only you can tear them down. Consider how early fear begins to shape us. As children, we're warned. Be careful. Don't dream too big. Play it safe. Each phrase seems harmless, even loving. But underneath is a seed of fear planted in fertile soil. And as we grow, those seeds sprout into beliefs. We start to associate ambition with danger, vulnerability with weakness, risk with failure. By the time we reach adulthood, the garden of our mind is overgrown, not with potential, but with protection. We don't live to thrive. We live to avoid pain. But here's the paradox Hill exposes. The more you try to avoid pain, the more you surrender to fear. You become a servant to it. You choose smaller dreams so they don't hurt when they break. You choose silence so no one can criticize your truth. You choose numbness over failure, routine over meaning. And yet, you wonder why you feel empty. That emptiness, it's not failure. It's the result of betraying the part of you that still wants to live boldly, the part fear tried to silence. Hill's brilliance lies in his brutal clarity. Fear is not an emotion to be soothed. It is a pattern to be interrupted. And that interruption starts with awareness. Awareness of your thoughts, your habits, your internal language. Because the devil, as Hill writes, doesn't possess you in a moment of terror. He drifts into your mind during boredom, distraction, routine. That's when fear tightens its grip, subtly, slowly, until you believe your limits are real. But they're not. They're rehearsed. So the question is no longer, what are you afraid of? It's, what lie has fear convinced you to live? That's the first crack in the illusion. And once that crack forms, the light gets in. because inside every fear is a buried truth. The truth of who you could become if you weren't so busy hiding from yourself. And that truth, once awakened, will not go back to sleep. Once you've seen fear for what it is, a parasite feeding on your potential, you can begin to reclaim your power. But power, as Hill teaches, is not brute force. It's clarity. It's direction. It's the unwavering decision to no longer be available for self-betrayal. You don't overcome fear by pretending it's not there. You overcome it by walking straight into it with your eyes open, heart steady, and mind aligned. Because once you face it without flinching, fear loses its mystique. It becomes what it always was, smoke without fire. The transformation begins with a single phrase, a phrase Hill held as sacred. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. This isn't poetic fluff. It's psychological reprogramming. The mind, as Coué also emphasized, believes what it is told repeatedly. If you keep affirming fear, your life will mirror fear. But if you consistently affirm agency, courage, and choice, your reality begins to bend in that direction. Thought, when repeated with conviction, becomes belief. And belief shapes action. Action becomes character. Character becomes destiny. This is why fear cannot be reasoned with. It must be replaced. Replaced by a vision so strong, so emotionally charged that fear no longer stands a chance. Hill's antidote to fear was not denial. It was definiteness of purpose. When you have a purpose that consumes you, fear becomes irrelevant, like a shadow in the presence of fire. The mind, when focused, has no room for confusion. But a drift-in mind? That's fear's playground. So the mission is clear. Define your purpose or live by someone else's. Ask yourself, when was the last time you made a decision that scared you and expanded you? That combination is the compass. If fear is present, it doesn't always mean stop. Sometimes it means you're on the edge of growth. Hill never asked us to be fearless. He asked us to be aware, to study our fears like scientists, to examine the patterns, the triggers, the way we speak to ourselves when no one's listening. That's where the devil hides, not outside, but within the stories we tell ourselves in silence. So here's the challenge. What if the fear you feel is not a warning, but an invitation? What if it's not there to hold you back, but to call you forward? Fear, when harnessed, becomes fire. And that fire, once lit with purpose, cannot be extinguished. You don't need to fight the darkness. You just need to light the flame. And Hill's work is the match. Napoleon Hill revealed a cruel irony. Most people are not afraid of failure. They are afraid of their own power. Real success demands the destruction of who you were trained to be. It means shedding identities, beliefs, and behaviors that once kept you safe, but now keep you small. That's terrifying, because stepping into your power requires killing your comfort. It means leaving behind the version of you that fears judgment, rejection, risk. But here's the secret Hill whispers between the lines. Your fear isn't proof you're weak. It's proof you're on the edge of something sacred. Think about how fear disguises itself. It wears the mask of logic, whispers the language of caution, and pretends to be responsibility. Now's not the time. Maybe when I'm more ready. What if it doesn't work? Hill called this the devil's most seductive trick, making you believe that fear is wisdom, but it's not. True wisdom acknowledges risk but moves anyway. It doesn't wait for certainty. It creates it through decision. because indecision is the devil's playground, and hesitation is where your dreams go to die. This is why Hill speaks of drifting with such venom. A drifter doesn't fail, they fade. Slowly, quietly, painfully, and that's far worse than failure, because at least failure teaches. Drifting only numbs, and in a world flooded with distractions, it's easier than ever to drift, to scroll instead of speak, to conform instead of create, to numb instead of feel. But drifting is not passive, it's a choice to let fear dictate the rhythm of your life until one day you look up and realize it's too late to live on your own terms. So how do you stop drifting? With intention, with urgency, with the unapologetic decision to become radically responsible for your thoughts. Every fear-based belief must be interrogated. Every lie you inherited about your worth, your power, your path, challenged. Hill believed the greatest revolution happens not on the streets, but in the mind. And when you reclaim your mind, you reclaim your life. You stop reacting and start creating. You stop surviving and start becoming. Because at the end of the day, fear only wins if it goes unchallenged. It feeds on silence. It grows in avoidance. But the moment you turn toward it, name it, face it, walk through it, it begins to unravel. Not all at once, but piece by piece. And behind that unraveling is you, raw, real, and ready. Not perfect, but powerful. The moment you decide to stop being ruled by fear, a war begins inside you. Not against the world, but against every part of you that has adapted to playing small. Hill understood this battle intimately. He saw how the mind, once awakened, begins to rebel against the prison it helped build. You will feel resistance. Your habits will scream. Your thoughts will bargain. Your fear will offer comfort in exchange for your potential. But that's when you know the transformation is working. Real growth feels like loss before it feels like freedom. The 6 basic fears, as Hill named them, poverty, criticism, ill health, loss of love, old age, and death, are not just obstacles. They are shadows cast by a mind disconnected from purpose. Fear of poverty is not about money. It's about identity. Fear of criticism is not about others' opinions. It's about your inner child begging to be accepted. These fears are mirrors. They reflect what we most need to heal. And healing, in Hill's philosophy, is not passive. It is the result of deliberate mental re-education. You cannot escape fear. You must outgrow it. And how do you outgrow fear? By feeding the mind something stronger, a vision, a burning desire, a definiteness of purpose so compelling that it overrides every doubt. Hill was clear, the mind becomes what it consumes most. If you feed it worry, it will serve you anxiety. But if you feed it faith, it will serve you possibilities. Faith, not in the religious sense, but in the inner knowing that your life has meaning, that your mind is a tool, not a tormentor. That thought, when directed with purpose, becomes the most powerful force in the world. That's why repetition is sacred. Hill, like Coué, knew the mind obeys what it hears most. So speak truth into your life, even when you don't yet believe it. Say, I am powerful, I am in control, I am the master of my emotions. Say it until your mind stops arguing. Say it until your fear becomes your fuel, because your future depends on the story you're willing to repeat, again and again, until it becomes the lens through which you see everything. And then, fear becomes just another word for next level. So the next time fear whispers, you can't, respond with, "Watch me." Not from ego, but from decision. Because courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the presence of meaning that's greater than the fear. Hill didn't want you to eliminate fear. He wanted you to transcend it. And the only way to transcend it is to walk through it. Fear is not your enemy. Unconsciousness is. That's what Napoleon Hill tried to show us. Fear only dominates a mind that's drifting, passive, reactive. But a mind that has been claimed, consciously, deliberately, becomes immune to manipulation. It sees fear for what it is, a messenger, not a master, a signal, not a sentence. And once you see it that way, it loses its grip. You stop asking, "How do I get rid of fear?" and start asking, "What is fear trying to show me about my next evolution?" Think of your fear as a compass. Hill would say that the very thing you're afraid of might be the door to your greatness. Fear of public speaking? Maybe your voice was meant to move crowds. Fear of rejection? Maybe your truth was meant to disrupt and awaken. The mind left on autopilot will run from fear. But a trained mind, a disciplined mind, will lean into it, will walk straight toward the discomfort because it understands that fear is the final illusion before breakthrough. Hill wasn't offering theories. He was handing you a weapon, a mental sword forged in clarity, discipline, and desire. He wanted you to see that the devil, whether external or internal, only wins through confusion. If you are clear, if you are definite, if you are emotionally connected to your purpose, fear cannot hold you. It will try. It will test you. But it cannot own you unless you surrender. That's the essence of Hill's gospel. Fear is a test of will, not a life sentence. And so you arrive at a choice. Not a dramatic one, not one declared to the world, but an invisible, sacred decision made in silence. Will you remain a drifter, letting fear map your life for you, or will you become a thinker, a deliberate creator who maps their life with intention, courage, and conviction? That choice, made consistently over time, is the difference between a life of regret and a life of power. Not comfort, not ease, but power. Because in the end, fear is not a wall, it's a threshold, a thin veil between who you were and who you could be. And the only way to cross it is to step, not with certainty, but with faith. Faith in your mind, faith in your voice, faith in the fact that everything you're seeking is already waiting, just on the other side of the fear you've been taught to avoid. So now we return to the beginning, not the start of this video, but the start of every moment you've ever hesitated, doubted, or backed down. What if all along fear wasn't a stop sign, but an invitation? Napoleon Hill didn't write about fear to scare us. He wrote to wake us. Because the greatest tragedy is not a life full of fear, it's a life lived beneath its potential because fear was mistaken for truth. The voice in your head saying, "What if I fail?" is not your enemy. It's your call to rise. You see, the mind doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. It simply reacts to what it's told repeatedly. That's why Hill taught that autosuggestion is the master key, because repetition is what rewires belief. And belief is what rewires destiny. If your mind can be trained to fear, it can be trained to lead. If it can be programmed to doubt, it can be programmed to decide. But it starts with a single choice: to no longer give fear a vote in your future. Look around. So many people today are prisoners in open cells, held not by bars but by thoughts they never questioned, thoughts they inherited, thoughts repeated so often they became law. But you're not here just to consume content. You're here to rewrite that law, to stand at the gates of your own mind and say, "This ends with me. I choose to think with purpose. I choose to speak with power. I choose to walk with clarity." Hill didn't say the journey would be easy. He said it would be worth it, because once you realize that fear is only strong when you're passive, and that your mind becomes unstoppable when you are intentional, something shifts. You no longer wait for confidence. You cultivate it. You no longer pray for strength. You practice it. And in doing so, fear becomes nothing more than proof that you're heading in the right direction. So let me leave you with this. What if the fear you feel right now is the final guardian before your next breakthrough? What if it's not warning you to stop, but daring you to begin? The world doesn't need more people avoiding fear. It needs more people transforming it into fire, into fuel, into focus. Be that person. Don't just think about it. Comment, share, speak, act. Because you don't overcome fear with time. You overcome it with motion.